Admiral Park stood alone before the memorial wall. The black granite stretched for 3 kilometers through the heart of New Seoul, and every centimeter was covered with names. 2 billion names. 2 billion humans who died 50 years ago when the stars brought death to Earth. She was 7 years old when they came. She remembered the sky turning orange as their ships descended. She remembered her mother pushing her into the underground shelter. She remembered waiting for 3 days in darkness, listening to explosions above, until soldiers finally opened the doors and told her that her parents were gone. Now she was 57. Her black hair had threads of gray. Her eyes had seen too much war. And she wore the uniform of Earth's highest military commander because she had sworn on her parents' graves that humanity would never be victims again. The wind carried the smell of cherry blossoms across the memorial. Spring had come to Korea as it always did. Life continued. But the wall remained, and the names remained, and the memory of that terrible year remained in the heart of every human alive. Her communicator buzzed. She touched the device on her wrist and heard the voice of General Minyu, her oldest friend and the head of Earth's intelligence services. Admiral Doctor is ready for you. Project Omega has reached final completion. Took one last look at the wall. She found the names she always found when she came here. Park, father, mother. I'm on my way, she said. The transport took her to Mars in 4 hours. 50 years ago, humans could barely reach their own moon. Now they had colonies on 6 worlds and ships that bent space itself. Tragedy had united humanity in a way that peace never could. Every nation dissolved. Every border disappeared. Every human became a citizen of one world with one purpose: survival. The research facility sat deep beneath the Martian surface. Armed guards checked her credentials at 7 different checkpoints. Even the Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces had to prove her identity here. Project Omega was humanity's most guarded secret. Doctor waited for her in the main laboratory. He was a small man with glasses and messy hair, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. But his eyes were bright with excitement and something that might have been fear. Admiral Park, thank you for coming personally. You said it was urgent, Doctor, show me. He led her through corridors filled with equipment she didn't understand. Scientists worked at holographic displays, running calculations that would take her years to comprehend. But she didn't need to understand the science. She only needed to understand what the science could do. They entered a vast chamber. In the center, floating in a containment field, was a sphere no larger than a human fist. It was perfectly black, so black that it seemed to swallow the light around it. This is it, said. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. A stable artificial singularity, a miniature black hole that we can create, control, and deploy. Stared at the sphere. Such a small thing, such a terrible thing. How does it work? We launch it toward a target planet. Once it reaches the surface, we release the containment. The singularity begins to grow, consuming matter and converting it to energy. Within 6 hours, it will have enough mass to collapse the entire planet into itself. Nothing survives, nothing remains. The planet simply ceases to exist. Felt cold despite the warm air of the facility. And we have 12 of these positioned around the... Correct, hidden in their asteroid field for the past 30 years. They don't know, no one knows. If we activate them, their world dies, all 18 billion of them, every city, every ocean, every living thing. His hands were shaking slightly. Admiral, I built this weapon because you asked me to, because humanity needed it, but I pray every night that we never have to use it. Understood his fear, she shared it, but she also remembered the orange sky and the shelter and the 3 days of darkness. She remembered the names on the wall. They killed 2 billion of us because they thought we were weak, she said. They saw a young species with primitive technology and they decided to take our world. They would have wiped us out completely if we hadn't fought so hard that conquest became too expensive. And now, 50 years later, our intelligence says they're gathering their fleet again. Nodded, I've seen the reports. They think Project Omega is a lie, human propaganda. Then they're fools, and their foolishness might cost them everything. She walked closer to the containment field, studying the tiny sphere of absolute darkness. Somewhere in that impossible object was the power to end worlds. Humanity had created it not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The galaxy was full of species older and stronger than humans. The Galactic Council had refused to help when they attacked. Some species had actually hoped humanity would be destroyed. Now those species would learn what humans were capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction. Doctor, I want all 12 devices at full readiness. If they come again, we won't fight their fleet. We won't try to defend our colonies. We'll simply end their existence as a species. Look troubled. Admiral, that's genocide, 18 billion lives. They killed 2 billion of ours when we had done nothing to them. They're coming to finish the job, and I will not let another 7-year-old girl lose her parents to alien invaders. His voice was hard as steel. Prepare the weapons, Doctor, and pray thee are smart enough to stay home. She left the laboratory and returned to her transport. As the ship carried her back to Earth, she looked out the window at the stars. They were beautiful and cold and full of dangers that humanity was only beginning to understand. The galaxy had taught humans a harsh lesson 50 years ago. Now humanity would teach a lesson of its own. The message was simple. Earth remembered every name on that wall. Earth remembered every child who lost their parents, every parent who lost their children, and Earth would have justice one way or another. Admiral Park closed her eyes and thought of her mother's face, her father's laugh, the home that had burned while she hid underground. Never again, she whispered to herself, never again. The stars had no answer, but somewhere across the vast darkness of space, they were gathering their ships, confident in their strength, blind to the doom that awaited them if they made the wrong choice. The countdown to humanity's final warning had begun. Captain Lee had served on the Silent Thunder for 12 years. His ship was small and fast and invisible to most sensors. His job was simple. Watch the enemy, report what he saw, never get caught. For the past 6 months, he had been watching the border. The orders came directly from General himself. Something was happening in space, and Earth needed to know what. Now knew, and he wished he didn't. Captain, I've finished analyzing the transmissions. Lieutenant Sora Hand's voice was steady, but could see the fear in her eyes. She was young, only 26, the best communications specialist in the fleet. She could crack any code, translate any language, find any signal hidden in the noise of space. It's worse than we thought. Looked at the holographic display floating above the command table. 3,000 red dots represented warships gathering near their border. 3,000. Earth's entire fleet numbered less than 400. Tell me. Sora pressed a button, and a voice filled the bridge. It was harsh and cold, speaking in the clicking language of but the translator turned it into words could understand. The humans have grown comfortable in their small corner of space. They believe their warnings protect them. They believe their secret weapon is real. High Command has confirmed that Project Omega is propaganda, nothing more. Human technology cannot produce planet-killing devices. They are bluffing. We will call their bluff. In 30 standard days, we begin the final purge. This time, we will not stop until every human is dead and their worlds are ash. The message ended. The bridge was silent. Felt his hands tighten into fists. The final purge, not conquest this time, not enslavement, complete extinction. They had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. Get this to Earth immediately, he said. Maximum encryption, priority 1. Already transmitting, Captain. 12 hours later, his message reached Admiral Park. 6 hours after that, the United Earth Council held an emergency meeting. Every leader of every division sat around the great table in Geneva, watching the holographic replay of the transmission. When it ended, the room exploded with voices. Fear, anger, denial, some wanted to surrender, some wanted to run, some wanted to fight. Admiral Park slammed her hand on the table. The room went quiet. We have 30 days before they come, she said. 30 days before 3,000 warships arrive to wipe out our species. What are we going to do about it? General Minu spoke first. Our fleet can't win a direct battle. We're outnumbered nearly 8-1. Even with our tactical advantages, we'll be overwhelmed. Then we use Omega, said another voice. It belonged to Director, head of Earth's Defense Ministry. She was 70 years old, a survivor of the first attack like Admiral Park. Her face was hard as stone. Launch the devices, destroy there before they reach ours. That would be genocide, said Ambassador. She was younger than the others, only 40, but she spoke with quiet authority. Her job was diplomacy, finding peaceful solutions. 18 billion would die, civilians, children. We would become the monsters they claim we are. They're coming to kill us, Director snapped. All of us, every man, woman, and child on Earth and our colonies. Are you suggesting we let them? I'm suggesting we try diplomacy first, The Galactic Council. The Galactic Council watched us burn 50 years ago and did nothing. Admiral Park's voice cut through the argument. I already sent ambassador to request their help. Tell them what happened. The ambassador's face was bitter. They refused. The council voted 31-16 against intervention. Several species expressed private satisfaction that the human problem might solve itself. The room went silent again. This was the truth that every human knew but hated to accept. The galaxy did not want humanity to exist. They were too aggressive, too emotional, too unpredictable. The older species had spent millions of years building a careful order, and humans disrupted everything they touched. Admiral Park stood. Then we do what we must. We invoke the final warning protocol. She walked to the main display and pressed a sequence of buttons. Every screen in the room changed to show the symbol of United Earth, a blue planet surrounded by 12 stars. 50 years ago, we made a promise to ourselves. Never again. We built weapons that could end worlds because we had to. We hid them around them because we knew this day might come. Now we use them not as weapons of destruction, but as weapons of deterrence. She opened a communication channel. This is Admiral Park, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. I am broadcasting on all frequencies in all languages to every species in the galaxy. Hear my words and remember them. Her voice echoed across the stars, traveling at faster-than-light speed to every corner of known space. The Dominion has declared their intention to exterminate humanity. They believe we are weak. They believe our weapons are lies. They are wrong. We have positioned planet-killing devices around them. If their fleet attacks human territory, we will activate those devices. Their world will die. All 18 billion of their people will die. This is not a threat. This is not a bluff. This is a promise. Attack us and face absolute destruction. Earth has spoken. We will not speak again. The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one moved. Then General smiled grimly. Well, Admiral, now we wait. Now we pray, said quietly. Pray that they're smart enough to believe us. Across the galaxy, 1,000 species heard Earth's message. Most laughed. Humans were primitive, emotional, barely 100 years into space travel. Planet-killing weapons? Impossible. They were right. It was all propaganda. On the High Admiral Ryu watched the human broadcast with contempt. These creatures dared to threaten the Dominion. They would learn the price of such arrogance. Continue preparations, he ordered. We launch in 30 days. The humans will die screaming. He turned off the display, utterly confident in his superiority. He had no idea that in the asteroid field above his world, 12 small objects waited in the darkness, patient and silent, each one containing the power to devour his entire civilization. The warning had been given. The choice now belonged to the... And they were about to choose wrong. The fleet came on the 31st day. 3,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. At their center flew the Dominion's pride, the massive flagship of High Admiral Ryu. Admiral Park watched them on the display of her own flagship, the Earth's memory. 400 human vessels formed a defensive line between the enemy and the colony world of New, home to 50 million people. All ships report status, she said calmly. One by one, her captains responded. They were ready, they were afraid, but they would fight. Admiral Ryu is hailing us, her communications officer reported. Put him through. The commander appeared on screen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that burned with hatred. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute certainty of a predator facing prey. Human commander, your bluff has failed. Your imaginary weapons do not frighten us. Surrender now and we will grant your species a quick death. Resist and we will make you suffer for generations before the end. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. Admiral Ryu, you were warned. Every death from this moment forward is your responsibility. Pathetic creatures, Ryu cut the transmission. All ships commanded, engage. The battle began. Human ships were smaller and weaker than vessels, but they were faster and their crews were desperate. Captain Lee led a squadron of destroyers straight into the enemy formation, weaving between massive warships, launching missiles at vulnerable points. His ships died one by one, but each one took 3 enemy vessels with it. Captain, we've lost shields, Sorahan shouted over the explosions rocking the bridge. Keep firing, pulled his ship into an impossible turn, dodging a beam that would have cut them in half. We're not dead yet. On the planet below, Commander Shin watched the sky burn. His ground forces numbered 20,000 soldiers, veterans of a dozen colonial conflicts. They were the last line of defense for the civilians evacuating to underground shelters. The first descended like metal rain. Thousands of enemy soldiers poured onto the surface, their weapons cutting down everything in their path. Forces fought back with everything they had. "Hold the line," he roared, firing his rifle at the advancing aliens. "Buy time for the evacuations." For 6 hours they held. Human soldiers died in the hundreds, but they refused to retreat. When one fell, another took their place. When their weapons ran out of power, they fought with knives and fists. But there were too many ships, too many soldiers. Watched his defensive line collapse. His communications crackled with the voices of dying men and women, screaming defiance even as they fell. He looked at the evacuation center behind him. 20,000 civilians still waited for transport. They wouldn't make it, not all of them. He opened a channel to the planetary reactor 5 kilometers away. "This is Commander Shin. Authorization code 774. Initiate overload sequence." The technician's voice trembled. "Sir, that will destroy everything within 50 kilometers, including our position." "I know," watch the soldiers advancing. "Do it for Earth." The reactor exploded 3 minutes later. The blast killed Commander Shin and his remaining soldiers. It also killed 60,000 troops who had gathered for the final assault. The evacuation transports escaped in the chaos. In orbit, the battle continued. Human ships fell, but the numbers were against humanity, and slowly, inevitably, Admiral Park's fleet was pushed back. On the orbital defense platform Hammer of Dawn, Sargent was the last defender alive. Her squad had died holding the weapons control room while enemy soldiers cut through the station. Now she stood alone, surrounded by bodies, her rifle nearly empty. The commander confronted her through the doorway. "Surrender, human. You have fought well. I will grant you a soldier's death." Laughed, it was the laugh of someone who had nothing left to lose. "You think I care about death? You killed my home, my family, my world." She raised her rifle. "I'm just buying time." "Time for what?" Smiled. Behind her, the weapons console showed 12 evacuation transports accelerating toward faster-than-light speed. "For them." She fired, the fired back fell. But the transports escaped. 20,000 civilians from New lived because one soldier refused to die until her job was done. Admiral Park watched New fall. She watched her fleet shrink from 400 ships to 200 to 100. She watched good people die by the thousands, fighting enemies they could not defeat. And still she waited. "Admiral," General's voice came through the secure channel. "We've lost 60% of the fleet. They are pushing toward Earth if we don't act now." "Not yet," his voice was ice. "They haven't committed fully. When Ryu brings his entire fleet to Earth when he thinks he's won, that's when we strike. Millions are dying." "I know." Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion she had shown. "I know, Minyu, but if we reveal Omega too soon, they might retreat. They might hide. We need them all in one place. We need them to see what they've done and know they can't escape the consequences." The battle raged on. Earth's forces retreated through 3 star systems, leaving colonies burning behind them. The followed, drunk on victory, certain that humanity's end was near. Finally, Admiral Ryu brought his fleet to Earth. 1,000 surviving warships hung in space above the human. Below them, 8 billion people waited for death. Ryu opened a broadcast to the planet. "Humans of Earth, your fleet is destroyed. Your colonies are ashes. Your species ends today. Pray to whatever gods you believe in. They will not save you." Admiral Park, commanding from the last remaining battleship, responded. "Admiral Ryu, you were warned. You didn't listen. Now you will learn what humans do to those who threaten our existence." She opened a channel to Mars, to Dr. and Project Omega. 3 words, that was all she said. "You were warned." Across the galaxy, on the 12 small objects hidden in the asteroid field began to move. They accelerated toward the planet below, carrying the artificial singularities that would consume everything they touched. The countdown to extinction had begun. And this time, it was not humanity facing the end. Doctor stood in the control room on Mars and watched the displays come alive. 12 green lights appeared on the holographic map of the home system. 12 weapons that humanity had spent 30 years hiding in the darkness of space. His hands were shaking as he confirmed the activation codes. Omega devices online, the computer announced. Estimated time to planetary impact, 6 hours, 14 minutes. 6 hours, that was how long they had left. 18 billion lives, countless cities of culture and history, all of it would vanish into the hungry darkness of artificial black holes. Closed his eyes. He was a scientist. He had dreamed of exploration, of discovery, of helping humanity reach the stars. Instead, he had created the most terrible weapon ever made. He had become death, the destroyer of worlds. But he also remembered his grandmother's stories. She had survived the first attack, hiding in a cave for 2 weeks, watching friends die of hunger and injury because no help came. She had made him promise that he would use his gifts to protect humanity. He was keeping that promise, no matter how much it hurt. Dr. Admiral Park's voice came through the communication system. Status report. All devices active and on course. They will detect them in approximately 4 hours when they become visible in their night sky. But by then, it will be too late to stop them. Understood, begin transmission. Activated the broadcast array. The message would reach the fleet at Earth and there at the same time. The entire galaxy would hear it. Admiral Park's face appeared on every screen across known space. This message is for High Admiral Ryu and the Dominion. 50 years ago, your species attacked Earth without warning. You killed 2 billion of our people. You burned our cities. You slaughtered our children. And when you left, you laughed at us. You called us primitives who would never threaten you again. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful, but her eyes burned with cold fire. You were wrong. For 50 years we prepared. We built weapons you cannot imagine. We placed them where you would never find them. And now, because you refused to listen, because you chose extinction over peace, you will watch your world die. The display changed to show the home system. 12 red dots moved toward the green planet at the center. Those are Omega devices, artificial singularities, miniature black holes. In 6 hours they will descend through your atmosphere, and then they will begin to feed. Everything they touch will be converted to energy and consumed. Your oceans, your mountains, your cities, your people, everything. Admiral Ryu watched from his flagship, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. This was impossible. Humans could not possess such technology. It was a trick, an illusion, a desperate lie. Scan the home system, he ordered. Full sensor sweep. His officers obeyed. Seconds later, they turned to face him with expressions of pure horror. Admiral, the readings are confirmed. 12 objects matching no known design. They're emitting gravitational signatures consistent with contained singularities. The bridge went silent. Scientists were detecting the same thing. Observatories across the planet turned their instruments toward the approaching objects. What they saw, everything they thought they knew about human capability. The devices were visible now in the night sky. 12 points of absolute darkness, blacker than the space around them, moving with terrible purpose toward the planet below. Stars disappeared as the singularities passed in front of them. Panic spread across the world. 18 billion people looked up at their doom and screamed. Admiral Park continued her broadcast. Admiral Ryu, you have a choice. Withdraw your fleet from human space immediately. Surrender completely and unconditionally. Witness what happens when you threaten our existence and pray that we choose to show mercy, or stay. Continue your attack, and watch your entire species vanish from the universe. Ryu stared at the screen. His fleet still surrounded Earth. His weapons were still pointed at 8 billion human lives. He could destroy them all in hours. But if he did, his would die. His people would die. Everything his species had built would be erased. Admiral, his first officer said quietly, we should withdraw, regroup, plan a new strategy. If we run, they will know we are weak. Ryu's voice was harsh, but there was fear in it now, fear he had never felt before. They will hunt us. They will destroy us anyway. If we stay, 18 billion of our people die in 6 hours. Ryu watched the countdown timer on his screen. 5 hours and 43 minutes. The black points in the sky above his grew larger with each passing moment. On Earth, Admiral Park waited. Her fleet was destroyed. Her people were defenseless. If Ryu called her bluff, if he decided to complete his attack and accept the loss of his, there was nothing she could do to stop him. But she knew something about that they didn't know about themselves. They were predators, yes. They were cruel, but they loved their world. They loved their families. They loved their children. And they would not sacrifice everything for the pleasure of killing humans. The communication channel opened. Admiral Ryu's face appeared, and for the first time saw something other than contempt in his eyes. She saw defeat. "How do I know you will stop the devices if we surrender?" "You don't," his voice held no comfort. "You attacked us. You killed millions of our people over the past month. You destroyed our colonies. You laughed at our warnings. Why should I show you any mercy at all?" "Because if you destroy our world, you become what you hate. You become us." Was silent for a long moment. The countdown timer showed 5 hours and 12 minutes. "Surrender completely. Power down all weapons. Allow my surviving ships to escort your fleet out of human space. Face trial for your crimes. Accept whatever judgment humanity decides. Do all of this and I will stop the devices. And if I refuse, then in 5 hours your species becomes a memory, and humanity will live with what we had to do. We have buried 2 billion of our own, Admiral. We know how to carry grief. Do you?" The connection went silent. Across the galaxy, every species watched. The Galactic Council stared at their displays in shock. They had dismissed humans as emotional primitives, too weak to threaten the established order. Now they saw the truth. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. They had hidden planet-killing weapons among their enemies for 30 years, waiting, preparing, ready to unleash total destruction if pushed too far. And they had been pushed too far. Admiral Ryu looked at the countdown. 4 hours and 58 minutes. He thought of his children his wife, his parents. He closed his eyes. The countdown showed 47 minutes when Admiral Park gave the order. "Doctor, deactivate the Omega devices." His hand was already moving. He pressed the button, and across the galaxy, 12 points of absolute darkness collapsed in on themselves and vanished. The hungry singularities that would have devoured an entire world simply ceased to exist. On the 18 billion people watched the black points disappear from their sky. For a long moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then the screaming began. But this time it was screaming of relief, of gratitude, of people who had faced extinction and somehow survived. They would never forget this night. For generations to come, parents would tell their children about the day the humans almost ended everything. About the 47 minutes that stood between their species and oblivion. In orbit around Earth, the fleet powered down completely. 1,000 warships sat helpless as the remains of humanity's navy surrounded them. Admiral Ryu stood on his bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, his face expressionless. He had lost, not through military defeat, but through the realization that his enemy was willing to do what he could not. The humans would have destroyed his world. They would have killed every alive, and they would have lived with the horror of it because they had already buried 2 billion of their own. That was the difference between humans and the killed because it was easy, because they were strong, because they could. Humans killed because they had to, because survival demanded it, because they remembered every name on the memorial wall. Admiral Park's face appeared on his screen one final time. "Admiral Ryu, your fleet will be escorted to the edge of human space. Your weapons will be dismantled. Your soldiers will be transported to holding facilities until trials can be arranged. Any attempt to resist will be met with immediate response, not from our fleet." She paused. "From the Omega devices we have positioned around your colonies." Ryu felt his stomach tighten. "You have devices at our colonies as well." "We have devices everywhere, Admiral. Every species that threatened us, every world that voted against our protection in the Galactic Council, every civilization that hoped we would disappear." Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "We are not cruel. We do not want to use these weapons, but we will never be victims again. Do you understand?" Yes, the word tasted like ash in his mouth. "I understand." The fleet was escorted out of human space over the following weeks. True to their word, the humans dismantled every weapon, processed every soldier, and prepared for the trials that would determine the fate of the Dominion. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, was in chaos. Ambassador arrived at the council chambers on the station called Harmony, where representatives of 47 species gathered to discuss the future of galactic civilization. She walked through corridors filled with aliens who stared at her with a mixture of fear and respect. 50 years ago, humans had been newcomers, primitives, a joke. Now they were something else entirely. The council session began with arguments and accusations. Some species demanded that humanity surrender the Omega technology. Others called for humans to be expelled from the galaxy entirely. A few brave voices suggested that perhaps humanity had the right to defend itself. Waited until the shouting died down, then she stood and spoke. 50 years ago, we asked for your help. They were attacking our world, killing our people, and we begged you to intervene. You refused. You watched us burn and did nothing. Some of you hoped we would be destroyed. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had laughed at humanity's suffering. We survived anyway, we rebuilt, we grew strong, and we made sure that no one would ever threaten us again without facing consequences. She pressed a button, and holographic images appeared above the council table. Every species that had voted against helping humanity 50 years ago, each one marked with a small red dot. Those marks represent Omega devices that we have hidden in your systems. We placed them there over the past 30 years while you ignored us, while you dismissed us as primitives. The chamber exploded with outrage, threats, demands, promises of war. Raised her hand, and somehow the room went quiet. We do not want to use these weapons. We do not want to destroy your worlds. We want peace. We want cooperation. We want to be partners in building a better galaxy. She lowered her hand. But we will never again trust our survival to the kindness of others. You taught us that lesson, and we learned it well. The council session lasted for 3 more days. In the end, a new treaty was signed. Humanity became a full member of the Galactic Council with equal voting rights. The Dominion was stripped of its military and ordered to pay reparations for 100 years. And a new rule was added to galactic law. No species could attack another without facing the united response of all council members. Ambassador was elected as the first human chair of the reformed council. When she accepted the position, she made a simple promise. We will build peace together, but we will never forget what happens when peace fails. 6 months later, Admiral Park returned to the memorial wall in New Seoul. Spring had come again, and cherry blossoms drifted through the air like pink snow. She walked along the wall until she found the names she was looking for. Park, Park. Her parents, dead for 50 years, their bodies never recovered from the ruins of their home. We did it, she whispered. We kept our promise, no one will ever hurt us again. She stood there for a long time, remembering the orange sky of her childhood, the darkness of the shelter, the sound of explosions above, the silence when the soldiers finally came. And then the 50 years of preparation, the building of ships and weapons, the training of soldiers, the hiding of Omega devices in the darkness of enemy space, all of it leading to this moment when humanity stood as equals among the stars. General Minyu found her there as the sun began to set. Admiral, the memorial ceremony is about to begin. Nodded, I'm coming. They walked together toward the gathering crowd. Thousands of people had come to honor the fallen, to remember the past, and to celebrate the future that humanity had earned through blood and sacrifice. Stepped onto the stage and looked out at her people. Survivors, fighters, the descendants of those who had refused to surrender even when the sky burned. 50 years ago, we learned that the galaxy is not kind, she said. We learned that we could not rely on anyone but ourselves. We learned that survival requires sacrifice. She paused, looking up at the stars appearing in the evening sky. Today, we stand as equals among the stars. Not because the galaxy accepted us, but because we demanded acceptance. Not because we are loved, but because we are respected. Not because we are peaceful, but because we are too dangerous to attack. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. We carry the memory of 2 billion souls who died so that we could live. We carry the burden of weapons that could end worlds. And we carry the hope that one day, the galaxy will see us not as threats, but as friends. She turned to face the memorial wall, where 3 kilometers of names stretched into the darkness. Earth remembers, Earth endures, and Earth will have peace. The crowd repeated her words, voices rising into the night. Earth remembers, Earth endures, and Earth will have peace. Somewhere among the stars, the other species of the galaxy watched and listened. They had learned a new truth about the universe. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Humanity was not to be attacked. Humanity was here to stay. And the memorial wall stood forever, a reminder of the price of survival and the promise of those who remained. Never again. Never again.